Hello, everybody. I'm back. So I was talking about the zombie book and the vampire book. Well, the zombie book originally had some pretty terrifying looking artwork, and it was originally called Zombie Alpha, and then I wrote the first vampire book, which was Black Market Blood Drive Santa Ana. And the Black Market Blood Drive books, I envisioned four of them, and they all took place in a different area of LA and Orange County. And so I'm like, okay, I'll do Zombie Alpha and I'll do this one. And so I put those out thinking, like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And I had some beta readers read Black Market Blood Drive, and they're like, dude, this is like the best thing you've written. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And I was just like really excited. I had huge hopes. I'm thinking I'm going to get like Black Star Canyon numbers. And I didn't. And I didn't fucking understand why. And then, like, looking back now, I kind of understand. Like, Black Market Blood Drive, I tried to sell as a vampire book. And there are vampires in it, but it's really a crime novel. Zombie Alpha has zombies in it, but it is also really a crime novel. So I was just like, and I was selling these as a zombie book and a vampire book. So I was like, fuck, man, maybe I should figure something out. So I did the second zombie book called Zombie Epsilon, and we had like another terrifying cover. I'm going to try to put all the covers up when I'm talking about them. And nothing really was working. Like, Zombie Epsilon was like a chunker for what my readers were used to. But I really thought it was great. I never even started writing the second Black Market Blood Drive book because it never found an audience. And that bummed me out, but I didn't want to waste time writing books that no one was going to buy if I couldn't market them properly. So with the zombie books, since it is more of a crime thing, I changed the name to The Brain Thief and then put it out as a serial. So, and we did totally new covers that were more like 60s crime, looking covers kind of thing. So the first book was called The Brain Thief, and that was really Zombie Alpha. The next book was Bioweapon Epsilon, which was originally Zombie Epsilon. And then the third was The Hunted Hunter, and then that was like the trilogy of the story. And then I wrote Test Subject Alpha, which was like a prequel. Those sold better, but I was still trying to like really hammer home the zombie element of it, and it just never took off. So that irritated the hell out of me. So then when I went to the pulp stuff, I'm like, okay, I want this guy, I'm going to call him the Gavel, and he has a bunch of gavels with sharpened ends, and he like punches people in the heart with them and like leaves them there as his calling card kind of thing. So it's like super vigilante, very pulpy. I wanted it to take place in the 40s, all this other stuff. So I decided to test the waters with it, and this I probably shouldn't have done either, but I tested the waters with it with a couple, like 10 to 12,000 word, like tiny. It's basically a little more than a short story. And I wanted it to look like a pulp. So it would be like, and I'll show it here. It's all like the gavel, #1, and then it'll be like, I think we originally called it "And in the Red Corner," which was a horrible title. And then the second one was like the gavel #2, and it was City of Electric Darkness. And that sounds kind of stupid now, but like back in the pulp days, there were all of these ridiculous titles like that. Like, what the fuck is Electric Darkness? It just means the power's out. Like, I don't know. And then I wrote the third gavel book, Bodies in the Hangman's Noose. And then the fourth gavel book, which I started writing but never finished, was called Final Judgment. And I didn't finish it because I was like spending so much time putting these stories together and writing them, and like getting the covers done, having them edited, putting a marketing plan together, and they just weren't selling to my audience. And I was like, I don't understand this. People like Black Star Canyon because I wrote it. Why don't they like this other stuff that I fucking wrote? I don't get it. And then I did the Hitman Black stuff. And when I was putting out Gavel and Hitman Black, I did it on alternating weeks. So 1 week, a Gavel episode would come out, the next week, Hitman Black, and so on and so forth. So with this, I only did 2 Hitman Black because I realized the folly of my ways. So basically, Hitman Black, I wanted it to be a espionage spy thriller. But I started with an origin story, and in this origin story, he is not a spy. He's not anything. He's barely a hitman. And so I was selling this. I'm like, yeah, this like espionage, spy, da 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 da. And it sold good on the first issue, or the first episode, or whatever you want to call it. And then like the second book, so the first one I called Lone Star, Texas, and the second one was Windy City Blood, and the third one was supposed to be called DC Death. And I never wrote it. But like the first one sold really good, and then just 2 weeks later, like maybe like 10% of the people, I don't even think it was that, of the people who bought the second one. And I was just like, what the fuck? And a lot of it boils down to how I was presenting these stories out into the world. So basically, after, what was that? February, January, March, April, May. Like 5 months of me trying 4 or 5 different things and none of them working, I panicked and immediately went into the 4th Black Star Canyon story, or season. And when that happened, it was June of, was that 14 or 15? Might have been 14. No? Fuck, I can't remember now. Anyway, so that was the best month I ever had. Selling. Actually, that whole summer was really good because I was still doing really good with KU, and there was a lot of buzz, at least in my mailing list and the peripheries of those people. It did really, really well. And I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do now? And at this point, I was talking to a couple different movie studios about doing a Black Star Canyon pilot or a movie, which I didn't want to do. And so those talks went on for a while. There was also a reality show that maybe I'll tell you about another time because that's a fucking topic that will go on forever. That we spent like, I don't know, almost 2 years filming little bits here and there. And that was a fucking nightmare. And nothing ended up happening with that either. And so instead of like cashing in on Black Star Canyon, I also did these Giallo books I called Shallow Giallo that were like, if you know what Giallo films are, the Italian thrillers, they were like parodies of those. And those were fun. And I still do it, a Giallo podcast called Giallo Chow Chow. And it was like books marketed to that audience. And even that, those didn't do good. They did okay, but not good. Like, they weren't Black Star Canyon. So it was like, I'm doing a podcast about movies, I'm trying to sell on my books, and nothing's really happening. So I was just really confused, didn't know what to do. So it took about a year, a little over a year, for me to go back and do the final season of Black Star Canyon. And another reason why I didn't want to go back to it was because I was terrified, because I was sitting there going, okay, I've written all this stuff, and Black Star Canyon has been really the only thing that I've done that has sold really, really well. So I'm going to finish this, and then what the fuck do I have? I have nothing that's selling well. I don't know what to do. And I didn't know if it was because... Well, I'll tell you about that in a second. But, so basically, I finally did the 5th Black Star Canyon season in December of last year. And the reception for it was very lukewarm. Like, I knew content-wise it wasn't going to be popular with the fans of the series because it's really, really dark. But I thought the people would come for it because of how much people liked it before. And that's not the case. Since I don't have a fan base that is like ravenous, that is constantly talking about the stuff I write, I don't have a publisher constantly like keeping like my name in people's minds and all that other stuff. And because how Amazon works, as soon as you stop doing something, your author rank just like, it actually goes like conk, and it just like drops. So when the 5th season came out, it was like nobody fucking gave a shit. Like, it was ridiculous. And like, I mean, it sold, and it actually sold better than any of my other things, but it was the worst selling Black Star Canyon thing, and I believe it was because I spent way too much time in between seasons 4 and 5, or book 4 and 5. So what that showed me was that if I'm going to do anything like this, I need to really stay on the ball and keep going with it. The other thing was was that I was selling the episodes for 99 cents at first, and then the book for like $2.99 or something like that. So when you look at it like that, you get 35 cents a book when you sell it at 99 cents. So I was making less money selling 5 episodes than I would if I just put out one book and sold it at the cheapest price. Amazon will let me sell a book to get a 70% commission. So I was kind of cannibalizing my own sales by putting it out that way. But I also thought that if I'm doing something every week, that's like 6 weeks of people constantly talking about it, sharing it, and what have you. Because a lot of other books that I've written, like, they'll come out in that first week. It's like, boom. And then, like, it just kind of dwindles slowly after that. So that just came up. I ended up with more questions than answers. And that's one of my biggest problems, too, is that I'm constantly thinking about rethinking and thinking that something's wrong. So I have to totally tear down my framework and start from scratch. And I'm just wanting to tell the authors or writers here, don't do it. Do not do it. I'm going to come back and do one more video explaining why. So I'll be right back.